and thank you for tuning in to the first official episode of Eternally Obsessed. This is going to be part one of a two-part episode where I talk about Eternals, joined with a very special guest. In part one, it'll just be your Eternals review, and in part two, which will be coming out on Monday, the guest and I will be reacting to your guys' last thoughts about the Eternals that you submitted either via Instagram, TikTok, or the Google form. I will say that at a certain part of this episode, my audio does get a little bit crackly and there's a lot of background noise from my side. I apologize. I try to tune it out as much as I can, but did not work out too successfully. However, I have ordered a mic for the next episode, so be on the lookout for new episodes. I hope you guys enjoy this one, and make sure to follow the podcast on all the socials, and if you want to be in an episode, fill out the Google form. I hope you guys enjoy, and thank you for tuning into this episode.
Hi everyone, it's me, Rid. Welcome back to the podcast, Eternally Obsessed, the podcast where I discuss anything Marvel, Star Wars, or anything in the media that I'm currently eternally obsessed with. For this week's episode, it's releasing on Sunday, December 5th, which happens to be 1 month since the movie Eternals came out. And so in order to sort of celebrate this, I have a very special guest with me who's going to be coming onto this podcast, and we're just going to be talking about Eternals, the movie, and pretty much our last minute thoughts on this. And yeah, so our special guest today is Ella. Thank you so much for joining me. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello. I do TikTok stuff, a lot of weird videos if you want to check that out. It's ellavstheworldd with an extra D is my main account, and you can see other accounts from there. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about Eternals.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Thank you so much for being on here. And I will make sure to link all of her stuff in the description below. So make sure you go check her out. She makes really great edits and really funny content. So yeah, she's really fun to watch. But yeah, thank you so much for being on here and joining me to talk about Eternals. Just to sort of jump on right on, what was when you first heard about Eternals, like what was sort of like your thoughts and like your just like your thoughts about like, oh, what is this movie, you know, what they're gonna do with it? Yeah, why don't we start right with that? Why don't you go first?
Well, I've been into Marvel for a few years now. I'd never heard of the Eternals until it was announced. I'm not that into the comics, but I'm a big fan of Lauren Ridloff, so I think that's what really got me hyped for the movie, seeing her like progress in her career. So
that's amazing. So have you been watching her since like The Walking Dead, or even like way before that?
The Walking Dead.
Walking Dead, nice. Yeah. For me, like personally, I only really heard about Eternals probably Disney Day of 2020. I've always been a Marvel fan too, like you said, and I was never into the comics, so I really didn't know who the Eternals are. But also in high school, I know they announced Eternals at, I want to say like one of the Comic Cons back in like 2019, right? But when I was in high school, I really didn't like stay up to date with like the Marvel news and whatever. I honestly just watched the movies as they came out because I was just like busy with just like academics. And so when the pandemic started, I started once again diving into Marvel head first. And so I started like catching up on all the latest news and all the latest projects that came out. And one of them was through Disney Plus Day. And so that's when I realized that, you know, wow, we're having like all of these different movies and shows come out. And one of them was Eternals. And didn't think of it much on Disney Plus Day. And then the first trailer dropped in like May of this year, right? Like that was when the first trailer dropped. And I saw the trailer and I was like, oh, this is like really beautiful. And it was just like the first trailer, and I like automatically got attached to this movie, and I was like, this is going to be something else. And the trailer dropped, and I actually like made an edit of the trailer as soon as it dropped, because I was like, this is something else. And I've never been like this attached to a movie before, or like pre-hyped before it's released when I have literally no idea who they are. But something about that trailer, I was just like, this is going to be very interesting to see. And so that's when I started like getting into the comics, understanding who the Eternals are a little bit. But that's where like my initial thoughts were, honestly, just like was very curious and like just very interested in it all of a sudden, you know? Yeah. So based off our initial thoughts, I think after you watched the movie, like just sort of like what were like your first thoughts, like initial reaction now after you saw the movie?
I think I was just kind of like in shock. I always thought it was going to be a good movie, but the reviews that we were getting kind of scared me. So I was very happy coming out of the movie knowing that it was everything I expected and more. But like, what? The characters were amazing, and there's a few characters I'll talk about later that really stuck out to me. But yeah, Chloe did amazing. The actors did amazing. And I'm now a huge Chloe fan. So that came out of it.
Yeah, I pretty much attest to everything you say. Like the reviews were something else. There were definitely a journey in it too to sit through and listen to. But you know, like I watched the movie and I understood why people didn't like it after I saw the movie. And I did understand the reviews criticism and like for the most part why people may not enjoy it and why this could be a very divisive film. But for me, like I was like, this is a really great movie. And this is just like I fell in love with it. So yeah, it's like pretty much wow. It was a very interesting experience. And how many times have you seen it since your first, because I know you've rewatched it.
I saw it once with my family, and then I actually caught up with a friend who I hadn't seen in like 2 years because of COVID, and we went to go see it in IMAX. So I've seen it twice.
You got to see it in IMAX. That's amazing.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
And there was like no one there, and she listens to my rambling, so we were like talking the whole time about it. It was so fun.
That's great. Yeah. Wow. 2 times. And IMAX, I've heard like it's beautiful on IMAX. I don't think my theater does IMAX, so don't think I ever really got to see in like IMAX format because I have a very like local theater to my college town and it's like very small. So, but yeah, I want to watch it 3 times. I was like, this movie, like I never rewatched a movie ever, but then
Yeah.
Again, like kind of what we were talking about, you know, like when you're in college, you kind of have the freedom to do what you want. I could rewatch a movie as many times as I wanted because like no one was there to judge me and like really to like say, oh no, like why would you be rewatching a movie? So yeah, went and watched it 3 times and no regrets. I like know someone who also watched it 5 times and I was like, that is like,
I just want to know where you're getting that money. Like you're going broke.
5 times. Like I was like regretting doing like 3 times already, but I was like, you know what? I will never spend this much on a movie again. Like this is probably the only movie I'll actually rewatch. So like go home or you know, go big or go home. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, so initial thoughts, like I think we can just start diving into the characters because, you know, I'm sure you have a lot to say about characters, especially Lauren Ridloff's Makari, and characters were a really integral part of this film. And I think even with characters, like there was sort of like a divide I saw from just like audience overall was like most of the audience was able to care about the characters. Like I also saw like some people just weren't able to like care for all the characters at the end just because you're stuffing 10 characters into one movie. And it was like, it's like Avengers 2012, except you have no idea who they are before the team up. So I also wonder like why Marvel decided to do that. Like why did they decide to give like such a huge team up movie beforehand? Because I know they did that with Guardians, but Guardians was still 5 people and like it was still like focused on like a central character, which was Star-Lord and then obviously Gamora, right? But like they just took a huge risk with this movie and like went in and gave us 10 awesome characters. Yeah, I was like I think that was another part that made it very intriguing was the fact that they put in like 10 characters. I was like, this is crazy.
I think that's how it's always been too, because I have been looking at the comics and like with Avengers they have individual comics for characters, but I don't think they do that for Eternals. I think it's always just them as a group, which makes it more interesting.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is usually them as a group. So I guess they were technically following the comic format in that sense where they were really focusing them on the group. And yeah, and like I've heard from like multiple reviews and stuff that like the Eternals never really took off in the comics, even though it was like Jack Kirby's creation, and like Jack Kirby was like really well known in the comic world, both Marvel and DC. Except for him, like the Eternals never really took off. So it was also like sort of a risk adapting these characters, since they were like very much unknown even to, I know, like a lot of like die-hard comic book fans, like some of them weren't even familiar with the Eternals. So it was like kind of, this movie was just like a big ambition, just a very big ambitious for Marvel with its characters too. But yeah, we can like sort of just discuss the characters. So who are your favorite? Like top three, maybe top five?
Yeah, I have like a solid top four, which goes Makari, Athena, Circe, and Druid. Just everything about them, amazing.
I have
Makari,
the same top four.
Yes.
I have just probably different order, but I have the same exact top four.
I love that.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people have Makari, Druid, and obviously they're like top three, top two. And then like Circe and I feel like Circe and Athena are like usually in the middle or sometimes even top three, but that's crazy. We have the same top four. That's amazing. Yeah. So like what did you like think of, you know, each of the characters, and just like where you want to start with this? I really don't, you can carry the conversation.
Athena, she stuck out a lot to me because in the trailers we don't see any of her struggle with her mental health. So all we saw, we were like, I was going in there expecting like this like badass strong character, which we got, but we also got to see a side of her that struggles. And I think that spoke to me personally because of my stuff with mental health. And it was just really cool to see someone that struggles with similar things is still able to be like that strong and important to this group. So I think that's why she stuck out to me.
Yeah, honestly, I'm gonna have to echo everything you said. Like with Athena, I think she was one of the most like intriguing characters I really loved wanting to see more of. Like before we went and saw Eternal, she was definitely like, I don't even know if she made it my top five, or she probably was somewhere around my top five. But after I walked out of that movie, like she's my number three. And it's honestly because her Mad Weary, and the way that it was shown, I think it just like made me want to see more of her. And like I was like, I left the theater and I was like, I need to see Athena solo project, like a spinoff or something, because her Mad Weary for the movie, it was kind of used to drive more of the plot, you know. But I really wanted to see her struggle with Mad Weary on an individual level, if that makes sense, right? And I thought it was a really like interest, like I definitely thought like I really liked the direction that they took with that. I just wish that they showed more of her individual struggle with Mad Weary rather than to just serve the plot, because you know the only reason that like Circe was able to find out about, or took the step to like find out about the Holy Emergence, was because of her drawing. So it served as a little bit more of like a plot direction. But I still think like regardless of that, it was a really intriguing concept to introduce, and it really made me love her, because the funny thing about Athena is like she's not one-dimensional. Like she's badass, she's a really great warrior, but then she also has like these really like minute one-liner moments. Like the one that sticks out to me from her is, I've already gave that speech. Like I think about that and I was like, I need more of that Athena. Like I want to see more of her personality in that way, right? So I think it was like these small moments with Athena that I was just like, I need to see more of that. And so she automatically shot up. And like you said, like I was also kind of able to relate to how, you know, you can like her struggles with mental health, but then also just her overall, the way she was just shown. And Angelina Jolie's performance as Athena was honestly like one of my favorites from the movie. Like she was so like cunning and badass, but then she also really had like her heartfelt moments. So yeah, I'm honestly like those are just like my favorite things about Athena. Yeah.
I want to talk about Makari, but I have like two more things about Athena. You were talking about individual moments. I think some of the stuff I want to see is like how she felt after she came back from those moments, because if you think, she went into this mode where she was like killing the people that she called family, and like that has to affect you when you come back and you like, and they kind of have that look of like, are you or are you not you? So I want to see more of that. And one of my favorite lines is kind of in the same moment, but she's like, don't kill her or something like that, but she says it so calmly, it's funny. So that's one of my favorite lines from her.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to echo what you said. Like, it was those like small individual moments from Dina that I feel like I wouldn't say we're missing, probably just because they didn't show because of like, you have 10 characters, but
Yeah.
I would love to see next is how she individually felt after that. And like, even though we did see her sort of redeem in Gilgamesh's death, I still feel like it isn't over for her. Like mentally, I
Yeah.
don't think she's like fully like dealt with the loss of Gilgamesh. So I hope that's something that they sort of also explore is how does she move on from here? Because she's been living for like 500 years with Gilgamesh in like Australia in the most like barren desert, and like now she's with the Eternals again, and it's like how does that affect her mentally? I think that's something that I would also be interested in exploring like into the future, and something that hopefully we see. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't we talk about Makari?
Makari, I love her, everything about her. And a personal headcanon of mine is that she has ADHD, because I feel like that would really explain the collection she has, and the fact that she is always collecting these new things as if she needs to always be stimulated in a way. So I saw that and I was like, I'm going to relate to you right there. But she was just amazing in Lauren's performance. As always, she's an amazing actor, and it shocks me every time to know that she's only been acting for like 4 years now, and she never planned on doing this type of thing. So I'm always impressed by her. But yeah, Makari's amazing. And her speed, I think, is the best portrayal that I've ever seen. Because often we see speedsters in like slow motion, but we were able to see her like in her time as she runs, which I thought was pretty cool. And I like the touches on like her kind of probably creating ASL from knowing it from the beginning. And her I like how they incorporated the vibrations, because that is something people who are deaf or hard of hearing have. Like they're able to sense things like that, and it's really cool to see that incorporated.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to echo everything you say. Like again, you hit really important points. Like honestly, her speed and the way that it was integrated with the fighting, like her battle with Icarus, like I was on the edge of my seat. And when it comes to like Lauren Ridloff's performance as Makari, like one of the most standout moments was to me was like when she screamed. I did not expect that. And so when I saw that in theaters, like I was like caught off guard, but in a good way, because it was so powerfully executed. I was like, this is cementing like Lauren as an actress. Like she's really good. And like she definitely like gave a really strong acting performance just through her facial expressions and just through like her hands. And honestly, like it was really commendable. And it's crazy that she's only been doing it for like 3 years,
Yeah.
but she knows that this is her strength and where it lies, and like this is what she's good at. So yeah, honestly, like Makari, the only critique I have is I wish we were introduced to her earlier, because I would have been really interested in seeing like why she was having this collection, like what it meant to her. So like what you were bringing up, I think that's a really like interesting canon, and obviously something you can relate to. So I'm glad you found something in that. But like I would have just like loved to know like maybe just like a little bit about why she had this collection. And the thing with Makari that I was most caught up, like I was most like confused about, is if Makari can run anywhere in the world and she can travel anywhere, why does she stick to the domo? Because she could literally be anywhere, right? So like, but she stayed on the domo for like those 500 years. So that's like my biggest question is like, what about her, like what about like maybe values she has or like parts of her personality is like, why did she decide to stay in the jungle for like 500 years when she could literally run and just be anywhere in the world, you know? So I think that's something like I definitely had questions about. And I feel like, yeah, like I would like to know a little bit more about later. Like, is that where her love of reading comes from? Like, why did she just stick? I think it's just like a lack of not knowing enough about like her personality.
Yeah.
It's more of like, yeah. So honestly, again, it's just like I want to see more of Makari.
I definitely want more of the dome. I think part of the reason is just because she can travel so fast. She probably has seen, if not all, most of what she's wanted. But my main question on her staying on the dome and having all that stuff is, we know Eternals aren't human. They're like kind of machines, but they're not. They bleed. They're artificial. That's all. That's what they are. If she's stuck on that dome and we see it's underground, random thought, do Eternals have to eat?
I have no idea because we did see Druid eating.
Yeah, like I
But
assume
like,
they can.
but like, do they do it out of enjoyment?
Yeah.
Or like, do they do it out of necessity?
And if
I feel
it
like
is mean,
yeah, like I feel like there's so many interesting questions about like the Eternals
Yeah.
and the way they're built. That's like really questionable. Like, do they need to eat? Or like, oh, there was one I was like thinking about like the other day too. I can't remember, but that's a good
like
question.
random small like questions like that. And I also want to know, because of her speed, was she able to get out? Like, can she phase and get out and get back in?
I think so.
Because I feel like she did get out a few times, because I don't think her collection was that big when we saw her originally, like before. So I have a feeling she is able to, and I would love to be able to see that, because I think that's such a cool part of being a speedster.
I feel like I think she is able to phase like from materials, and the reason why I say that is because I think we did see that when Fastos told her to find the location of Tiamat, they were inside the ship, but she just ran out of the ship to find Tiamat. So I'm pretty sure she could like, is that what you meant by phasing? Is like she doesn't need to be in like open space to run, like she can like go from like outside to inside? Because I'm pretty sure we like kind of saw that in that moment with Fastos, is she can like run through things in that sense, because she took that thing that Fastos gave her and like ran outside of the ship and onto like all the different parts of the world, right? So I think she might be able to.
I think she does. Like, we can't tell, because we know she like runs down the hall, but like the shot ends.
Oh,
and then she's out. So she could have went out of door, but she also could have phased through the wall.
Right.
For all we know.
Right. Yeah.
But there's like a lot with speedsters that could be explored with her. And I think being able to see that would be amazing. Also, talking about her powers, I think an important thing too with her character being deaf is the sonic boom she's able to do. Because a hearing person couldn't do that without losing their hearing and affecting their ears every time they did it. So I thought that was a really cool touch. And Lauren was talking about it, and it's one of the things that they call deaf gain.
Right.
And I just think that it's another touch that was very cool and important to see. And I kind of want to see, I was thinking about this before the movie came out. And I was like, I wonder if she's ever done this. And because it doesn't affect her, she doesn't know it will affect other people.
Right.
So I want to know if she's ever done it and like accidentally caused other Eternals to be like, whoa. And like have them like have a day where they're all like, they can't hear anyone and they're all just signing all day. So I think that'd be a very funny and cool thing to see. So I mean, like, if anyone's watching this, please write it. It's amazing idea.
Honestly, there's so much to explore with the Eternals, because like that movie was just not enough. And sometimes I do think that I wish we gotten like, I don't know, like because you can't do individual movies. So like would I have preferred a Disney Plus show and then a team up movie? But also like with the Disney Plus show, like there would be no stakes, like like, oh, here's like a little one shot of like what this Eternal was doing, what this Eternal was doing, what this Eternal was doing. So honestly, like, I was okay with just the movie, but I would agree that with some people this could have been split up into two movies rather than in one. Like if we were to critique the structure, like maybe two movies than one would have been maybe a better idea. But I think it just depends on like how much of the roles the Eternals play, because I feel like if you're gonna take the risk and introduce like 10 characters and you're gonna do it in like this huge like convoluted movie, like
And the actors. Sorry. But they have like very high profile actors in this movie that for all they know could have failed. Like that was kind of shocking too. I was like, this is such a like risk you're taking with these big actors and like the budget and traveling all these places, and it was just done perfectly.
Yeah, and so I'm pretty sure the Eternals are going to be playing a pretty big role in Phase 4, more than people expect, because I wouldn't think like Kevin Feige would take such a huge risk with this movie. And even though it did not go well critically, I still feel like that's not going to be stopping him from like going off into the future and doing like much bigger things with these characters. Because like otherwise, again, like why would you bring such high profile actors?
And it ended in a cliffhanger.
Yeah, it did. It was like,
wow. So there has to be an answer. Like, what's going on?
Mm-hmm. Well, honestly, we could talk about like appearances, but a character I want to touch on is Sprite and Icarus. I think kind of as a combo, because there is so many like different conflicting points that people have about like Sprite and Icarus. It's like, well, was Icarus right? He could be. Was he sort of played by Ajax? In my opinion, yes. Ajax did do him a little dirty. But then also, was he right in his actions and his execution? Most definitely not. He should not have killed Ajax or Gilgamesh or attempt to kill any of the other Eternals. And then you like there's Sprite, and like Sprite is probably like one of the more like heavily debated characters. It's like, I definitely don't hate her. I understood where she was coming from, but at the same time, it's like she tried to kill Cersei, like she did, and that part was just like she was giving her whole monologue, and I was like, no, you can't just kill her and then be like, no. Like if for Sprite, it was more of just like, yeah, I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts on those two characters?
Well, personally, I loved Ajax, so I'm kind of biased when it comes to Icarus because that hurt me. I do see where you can look at it and see that he was kind of played. Like he kind of, grew up thinking that this is it. And they can't really develop as we know. So I think that's something, and his character was just really well written. So it's hard to like completely not like him. But I think it was how he was written and how it was just portrayed was amazing, but he does go down on my list.
Oh, same. He's not pretty high up. It's just like his characters, like him and Ajax give me like very conflicting, like, do I like you, do I don't like you, or do I just think like you're really well written, but I don't know if you're necessarily good or bad? Because Ajax, like the thing with Ajax too, kind of relating to Icarus, is she's been doing this for millions of years. Like she's been working with Arishem. Like he said that like Ajax has been helping her, and then she comes to Earth and she's like, okay, well, I'm going to tell Icarus about this. And then for 500 years, he's been having the secret. Or did she tell him in Babylon? She told him in Babylon, or was it when they were in with the Aztec? I don't exactly remember when, but he's been having the secret for like 2,000 years, right? Or like hundreds of years for all we know. And she just tells him, and then he comes to her and he's like, oh, like, by the way, like the emergence is about to happen, like blah blah blah. And she's like, oh, by the way, we're not doing that. 7 days in, and she's like, by the way, we're not doing that. And she's like, and he's like, I abandoned my wife so that I could do this. Like this, I thought this is the end game. So I understood where he was coming from with that, because like she did burden him with this, and he thought she was going to follow through. Like he has been loyal to her I mean, more than Arishin to her, but like he has been loyal, and like he probably thought that she entrusted him with something big to like tell him this. So I just like that's like my conflict with Ajax characters. Like she's known about this, she's been doing it for millions of years, and she comes to this one planet and she's like, oh, by the way, we're not going to do it.
That's
You know?
what questions. I have a few questions. Like, as much as I love Ajax, like she's up there a little bit because I loved her. But if she's been doing this for so long, and we know that there's other Eternals, has she always been working with this group? And if she has, what changed this time around? Like, why did she decide to tell him this time? And obviously she hasn't been, like, this is her first time on Earth. What about that changed her, like, view? Like, we know it's because of the snap and how they work together, but what was it about these people on this planet after all those planets you've destroyed that was able to like change that in you?
That's true. I honestly think it just like requires like an Ajax prequel to be told,
Yeah.
you know? Like, because I would love to see like an Eternals prequel told through the lens of just Ajax. And it could be like an episode or something, but I think that's what's necessary. It's like maybe the other planets she was on was more like, I want to say like more like animal like species,
Yeah.
you know? And so maybe she's like, oh, this isn't as much worth it because they didn't have that much development, but she was just kind of there to just help birth the Celestial. But then she comes to Earth, and I feel like the thing with Ajax is like I feel like they did hint that she has thoughts about this planet, because I remember when they were in Babylon and she was talking to Arishin the first time we saw him, she was like, there's something special about this planet. And Arishin was like, no, like you can't deter. And she was like, okay, well, I'm not gonna deter, you know? So I feel like they did try to hint at those small moments, but it's just like, again, when you have like those 10 characters and you stuff them into one movie, it's like you still have like questions. Like you're just like, I want to see more, or I have these questions. So honestly, I just think like, but it's something they should explore is like the prequel of Ajax. Like why specifically, what were her past experiences compared to Earth that made her enjoy Earth so much and try to save it? Like I think that's something that's needed, especially because Selma Hayek said that she did sign a multi-year contract. So if she's coming back, it's like, well, why are you bringing her back? You know, so I think an Ajax prequel is necessary just to understand that. Yeah,
I think they have potential too for like a series on Disney Plus just to explore these questions character by character. And I really need that answer of is this the first time she's worked with this group?
Yes.
Because I think if it is part of her realizing, not to mention if she's been doing this all these years, she could have maybe kind of been manipulated by Arsham, like being told all of this, and then maybe she gets this new group and we see how much she cares for them. I mean, when Icarus is about to kill her, she's not blaming him. She's blaming herself. She's thinking she did this wrong. She's like the mom. She should have done better. I think it's just would be very interesting to see if that was part of what changed her mind. And just to see like little bits throughout her past of like, has she questioned it before? Were these other teams more important to her? Which team did she feel connected to? She just has a lot of potential.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, going off of Ajax, I think we can talk about Cersei because she technically was the lead of the movie, right? What I love Cersei. I think her biggest strength, and I feel like a lot of people have said this, is the fact that she was badass without having to like be like badass. Like her power was more rooted in like her love for the planet and more like for empathy. Like she was more of an empath. And I think that was like really well done. I don't like Cersei's like she was like that perfect person, kind of. I feel like personally, like she like had like these like moments where I was like, well, what exactly are you trying to do? because
Yeah.
she also didn't want to kill off Tiamat. Like, she wanted him to stay alive, but then I guess towards the end, like, she had to kill him off because
Yeah.
like, there was no other way, and the Unimind and stuff was destroyed too, so like Druid could have put him to sleep. So honestly, I think it's just like there's like no questions I have about Cersei. It's just like I want to see more of her, and I know for a fact that like Cersei is gonna be the lead Eternal
Mhm.
in future MCU projects. So if like the Eternals ever cameo or team up with the Avengers, like it'll be Cersei at the forefront. So I think what I'm most excited to see is just like Cersei's dynamics with the other Avengers, because she is the Eternal that loved the people the most,
Yeah.
right? So it's like I want to see her dynamic well with the Avengers now, and just see that explored, because she was the one who loved the people the most. So like how does that relate to and just being with the Avengers and her dynamics with there? I think that's like the only thing I just want to see more of, but I don't really like have any questions about her character since she was pretty well fleshed out.
I'm thinking the same thing, and I'm going to talk more about her, and then I'm going to talk about the Avengers after, because I have a few questions about that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, off the fact that they've done this multiple times, but they don't know they have, unlike Ajax, I want to know, again, were the groups the same every time? Was she with the same people? And has she always done this? Like, in every time she does this, is she always the one who's like, no, we shouldn't do this? Like, when it comes to the end and like everyone's finding out what's going to happen, like, has she always cared for every species that she's been with?
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's a big part of who she is as a character. She's just very caring, but I also think she was just adorable and funny.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we see when she's describing her power, she's just like, a rock, and I turned it to water, and then I turned it to air. And I just think she's very cute, and the human lifestyle, I guess you can call it, has very much become part of her, like with her obsession with the phone, with the weird ringtone she has, with like the Dane. Like, she's very much connected with these people, and I just think it's a very interesting part of her, because not many others have connected as well as she has.
Yeah.
But along with the Avengers, especially now with Eternals, we know that one of their fights was like on the news or something.
Yes.
Okay, so with that and the fact that Avengers are always on the news, I want to know what the Eternals think about them.
I made a TikTok about this the other day.
Like, when they saw like the Battle of New York, were they like, what were they thinking? We're like, oh, we could have done better, or maybe we couldn't have done better, or like, who are these people? And when the event, and when, like, I get they didn't reach out because they couldn't, but like, how on earth has no one reached out to the Eternals? Like, how do you see a random guy floating around shooting lasers out of eyes and go, oh no, that's nothing?
That's so, because that is literally a TikTok I made the other day. I was like, I don't know if you saw it, but I was like, actually, I think you did. I think you commented, I agree with the statement. I was like, what the fuck was Doctor Strange doing?
Yeah.
When the fight on, because we know the fight on London was televised, since Fastos' son literally said, oh, I saw you on TV. It's like, well, I think Fastos lives in the United States, right?
Chicago, I think.
Yeah, so if he was there and Strange was there, like, what was Strange doing? Like, maybe the multiverse that opens, maybe he was on the hunt for Wanda. Could have been. Okay, assuming he was on the hunt for Wanda, okay, he didn't see the fight in London. That's fine. But okay, so if you didn't see the fight in London, right? Like, what about when you have a whole ass celestial coming out of the ocean, and you have all of these other heroes flying around in this ship? Like, I'm sure he must have like seen something. He probably just didn't react, but it's like, I need these questions answered. Like, what did the Avengers think? Because
it just feels so disconnected.
We know the Avengers, like, Hawkeye literally saw Ronan on TV, and that's how he got involved. So who's not to say he did not see that giant celestial? And this is taking place at the same time as Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So keep in mind that like Far From Home still hasn't happened. And it's weird because like the Eternals, all the events happen, and you're telling me Far From Home happened, and Peter Parker had nothing to think about this. Like this is like I need like these small things. It's like I need to know what the Avengers thought, especially because Eternals happened pretty early on after Endgame.
Yeah.
And still have like Far From Home, and like I'm pretty sure Shang-Chi is also set after Falcon and Winter Soldier. So like what was Wong doing? Like Wong approached Shang-Chi about the 10 rings. So like what did he think about the Eternals? And he even asked Carol, like, what was Carol doing? Like, did she not think anything? Because this was technically an outer space threat to Earth. Or like, let me not even get started on the fact that Arishem appeared and we have not seen any of the Avengers react to that.
That is my question too, because when they're doing that fight, it looks like they're literally in the middle of the ocean. Mm-hmm. So does anyone know about it? Because it doesn't look like anyone around there was living there.
No, but it was on the news 2 weeks after. So it's like, what was their reaction then? Yeah.
It's just like, there has to be and Peter especially, like Peter is a nerd. Like there's no way he wouldn't be talking about this. To like at least little conversations with like Ned or MJ.
He'd be like, guys, did you see? We have something in the Indian Ocean.
Something happened and I wasn't there.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think that's a good like kind of loophole that they kind of went through, is the fact that because it was in the middle of the ocean, it didn't necessarily have to be televised. And so the Eternals weren't caught on screen in that sense. Because I still don't think like the planet knows who the Eternals are, because they weren't caught on. Well, actually, they might know who Icarus is because of
I think London. I think Icarus, Circe, and definitely Icarus, maybe Circe and Sprite are like the only ones that have maybe been shown. Mm-hmm. Like they only know up to like 3 of them exist.
Yeah, because all of the other fights, like the one in the Amazon, was like concentrated in the most like remote part. Like there would be no. Unless Cotton decides to release his documentary, the world is not.
Oh, I was talking about that too. I was like, what did he do with that? Did he release it? Because like, that's amazing. And I feel like if he did, that could be a big connection of how the Avengers kind of like, oh wait, this is more than just one guy, and we should probably look into this.
Yeah. Are the Avengers even the Avengers though?
Yeah.
Because like we still don't know that. Like they're all like, okay, I was literally thinking about this and I was like, you know how Eternals takes place at the same time as like Falcon and the Winter Soldier? Like imagine being Sam. Okay, Sam goes to bed as Captain America one night. The next morning he wakes up and he sees Arishem's face right outside his window because it's like, because it was, I think it was evening in the UK when Arishem shows up. And so it would have been morning in the United States, kind of around that time. So like, imagine just like Arishem showing up and like Sam wakes up to that and he's like, what is going on?
Like, how does no one question a weird thing in the sky?
Yeah, and he just disappears. So it's like I need to see, and like I feel like Sam would have such like a, like I need to see that, you know, like these like small things, like I need to know, because I feel like knowing the Eternals' reactions to the Avengers may not be as important, just except for Thanos. I feel like their reactions to the Avengers may not be as important since the group was split up anyways. Like they weren't together for these things, unless it's like more of like a humorous thing. But like I need to know the Avengers' reactions because they just finished fighting Thanos and then they have like this giant ass celestial just come out of nowhere and it's like, what?
Because we see like the Eternals, we see them talk about the Avengers and like acknowledge that they exist, but like nothing else has acknowledged the Eternals. And I think maybe part of that is the fact that, first of all the things before this, like the Falcon Winter Soldier, we didn't know about Eternals yet. Like that hasn't come out. So I think they might take that chance to maybe move when it was based, just so it makes more sense.
Maybe.
And then continue. Who knows? But going back to I can never remember his name.
Icarus.
Video guy.
Karun.
Thank you. I'm bad at names.
It's okay.
He has so much potential for like a funny, goofy little series. Like just like little vlogs he gets. I think that'd be a very interesting like series, fanfic, fan art. He's a very interesting character.
You know what him and Sprite should do? Because now that Sprite is human, he and Sprite should make a prequel series of the Eternals where she tells their stories and he records it. And like
Yes.
that's how we get a little prequel of the Eternals. And
She's
like
like,
maybe
in
like
day
he,
one,
like,
we did this.
yeah, it's like day one we did this.
Because
And
we know
everybody-
she talks about it. She told Dane.
and she's a
like,
storyteller.
yeah.
Like that's in her nature. Yeah. Why don't we talk about Sprite?
I think her character, first of all, was just hilarious. Sorry. She's just funny, and I think just how she was portrayed, at least in like the first part, she was just very interesting, and I like how the whole group would tease her about her youngness, and constantly comment on it. But I also kind of feel bad for her. Like, we see that moment in the bar where like she just wants to be like normal in a way. And I just think that was very interesting. And the way they portrayed her, I've seen a lot of people comment on the fact that she could be headcanoned as like gender fluid.
Yes.
And I think that
was gender fluid in the comics. Correct me. Yeah.
And I think that's very cool, like just having people being able to see that and such like a cool character.
Yeah.
Something that didn't make sense though, we see her reaction with Ajax, and we see that she is one of the closest people with Ajax. She's very close with her. So I want to know how did she go to Icarus's side when she knows that he's the one that killed that, like, Ajax, like the person that was so important to her? How did she just like turn that off?
I think, and this is where my issue comes with Sprite's character, is that love for Icarus was just very unnecessary, because she could have still sided with Icarus, and the reason could have been like, I want to get off this planet, and because I never got to have these opportunities that all of you guys had.
Yeah.
And it could have been like more out of spite and like vengeance that she sided with Icarus, and it actually would have left her story arc be way more powerful than just like, oh, I'm gonna side with Icarus because no.
Yeah.
I was just like so taken back by that character. But I think what really carried Sprite for me was like Leah McHugh's performance. She was so good. Like I love the theater, and she was like in my top 3 performances, and I was like, I want to see more of her. Like imagine her somehow meeting Peter Parker. That would be so cool.
She's just so interesting, and that's one of the reasons I can't like bear to not like her.
Right.
Because again, not that Icarus's reason isn't okay, but we do see her hesitate more on what she does, and we do see that she's had all this like built up rage for all these years of not being able to do anything.
Yeah.
And I just think that's a very interesting part of her. And I like how at the end she was able to like have that chance to be human and grow up. And I think I have a feeling they might not show her anymore because of that, but I really hope they do, like see her still interacting and growing up.
I think they will, because production wise, like it makes sense to make her human, because Leah's obviously gonna like grow up. And I'm sure that they want to keep Leah around and appear as Sprite. It would just be really interesting to see like where she goes as Sprite. Like, is she going to become part of the Avengers? Is she going to like, what is she going to do? Because she is not an Eternal anymore, in the sense that she doesn't have her power, she doesn't have immortality. Like, what does she do now? So it's like, does she still become a hero, like be like on the hero side at the end? Like, I don't know, because I think there's a lot of like open room to like explore with the character. And like, I'm glad that they actually took that production choice of making her human.
Because if they didn't, we wouldn't be able to see her anymore.
Yeah.
She already looks like older from now to like the movie.
Yeah, so, like, she was like in her she's like 14 when it was being filmed. Like now she's 16. Like, you change a lot. So yeah.
I think it's really cool, that whole thing. And I think it would just be cool to see how Sprite, like the character, like reacts to going to school. Is finding love going to be weird with these kids who aren't as mature as her? Yeah. How is she supposed to make friends with people that are like, they look the same, but in reality, she's like an adult.
She's so like mentally like different. It's
I
like,
have a
would
feeling.
this be more difficult? Because with the Eternals, like at least she had someone to relate to in the sense of like
Yeah.
immortality and all these stories, but it's like now like she literally has, unless she like meets like someone who's like significantly like also has lived through a lot, like someone like Thor, you know, like
Mm.
maybe she can like, I don't know how she necessarily have a friendship with Thor, but at least like they can relate on like the like the longevity aspect of it. Because I think it would be really interesting for her to actually like go to Asgard, because technically now Asgard is on Earth, right? So
Mm.
like if she like was able to live with the Asgardians, like that would be like a good place because they
She could
also like
fit in there.
yeah, like they've lived for long, like they can kind of relate on that longevity aspect. The only difference is they do age, and well, now she does age, so
Yeah. So
that
she
would
would
just be
be
more
able to like
confusing.
she would
Yeah.
be able to find people that look like her, but also kind of have the maturity of what she has.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Sprite's a very interesting character. I think we have so many other characters to get through, but honestly, like the thing with Druid is I I have very little to say about him because the very little says a lot. Is very interesting. Would love to see more. Conflicting character also kind of, because Barry Keoghan's performance as Druid was amazing,
Mm.
and he was one of the more like nicer Eternals. But also the thing where he controlled the villagers and tried to have them fight the deviant, even though he says he cares about the people, was very weird to me. Like, where are his true intentions and his motivations? Because that's got me really confused. Like, Cersei had to tell him to stop and be like, no, like, you can't do that with these people. So, like, that was one thing about Druid that got me very, very confused. So, like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think his like passionate, we don't see it explored in the comics. He is able to like read minds
Yeah,
along with control people,
right.
and that wasn't really explored in the movie, but I
Mm-hmm.
still think based on his reactions that that might be a thing they do more of in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But just his like his need to help them, and I
Right.
think when we see him controlling them, because when you first walk into the town we see that they're not controlled all the time,
No.
and he only does it like, I don't know, he doesn't do it all the time, but I think it's just the fact that it's been so long that he just kind of, his mind has just been like twisted, because he's like had all these guys, his all these people's voices, and he's seen everything, and I think just maybe he was twisted a little, because when Cersei talks to him, I think you can kind of see the fact that he's like, oh wait, she's right, I shouldn't be doing this, why am I kind of doing this? So I think he's would be a very interesting character to dive into more. I just think his he was just so caring. Like when he stepped up for Athena, and he literally like died for her in that moment. Like all he cared about was making sure she was okay. And I think that was, he could have had so much more, which makes me so sad that he was killed off, but he definitely should have had more. And I loved him. Personally, Athena and Gilgamesh, I see more as like non-romantic, but that again is because I had canon Athena as a lesbian, so that definitely puts that in there.
Right.
But I also just like to be able to have, because in the media a lot we see a lot of just a random woman and a random man and they just get pushed together.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to see like Gilgamesh and Athena, I like to see those pairs more as like a friend. Like to show people that yes, they can be friends and not be like romantic. But like if other people ship them, I don't care.
Yeah.
But just to me personally, I see it more as a, I'll protect you with my life and you are my soulmate, but not romantically, because that can be a thing.
Oh yeah, like that's like a different people.
I just think like the reason why Gilgamesh and Athena, I saw them as romantic is because right from the start they were like together. Like right when he got that first intro scene, like they had like the way that he held her hand and walked her back. Like
Mm.
from there I was like, okay, these two are tight. And then the way that he volunteered to stay with her, I was like, you have to love someone a lot to know that you
That
would
scene
shoot
broke
them
me.
and that like you might end up dying in their hands. Like that's why I think like I interpret it to be romantic because like it takes like you have to have like a huge amount of love for someone to be able to do that. And just the way that he has such a good connection with her and the way he looked out for her, like that's the reason why I personally just interpret. Also, they've like known each other for so long. Like, I just think it was the time that like I was like they might be like romantic, but I also understand where like people can interpret it to be platonic. Like maybe it was just like a lifelong friend sort of thing.
Mm.
And because there wasn't anything explicitly shown in the movie where like it was like with Drake and Makari, it was like Druid like really like it showed like he really wanted her, like he really had that like chemistry with between them.
Yeah.
In Gilgamesh it was like more of like through body language, and while body language is important, sometimes like I feel like in movies it's the way you speak that can also sort of like show if you like if it's like more of a romantic attraction or just like a platonic friendship, you know? Does
Mm.
that make sense? Like
Yeah.
that's what I just thought. But for the people who don't think, I think the reason why people have sometimes an issue, like I saw after watching the movie, with people thinking that Gilgamesh and Athena were platonic is the reason that Gilgamesh as an Asian man could not be with like a white woman like Angelina.
I hated that because I saw that they're like, oh, people just say that. I'm like, no, that's not why I say it. But like
Yeah.
people do believe that, but I'm like, when I see it, I'm like, I swear that's not why. I'm
No,
just
I know for you.
projecting onto Athena.
Yeah, no, I know for you it's definitely not like that, but I
Yeah.
think like that's another reason why people are hesitant to call like because most of the time when people call them platonic, it's because of like more of how they view like
Mm.
the pairing to be dynamically, you know. But I know for you it's not like that, but I can understand like why you see it as platonic at the same time as well. Yeah, going off of relationships, Fastus, I enjoy Fastus. Like he was the most like solid character throughout the film in the sense that like his intentions were like his intentions were the ones that I could most understand and see. Like it
They're
was the
like
most set in
clear.
stone. It was like kill out the celestial or nothing else. I need to protect my family. Like he was the most clear-minded and he was very adamant, but at the same time like he had like he had like this very unique humor that I loved.
Mhm.
He was I think the thing with him, he was like very like straightforward and direct, but in like a funny way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
He was like fall collection, IKEA,
Yeah.
ass. It was like funny, but it was also like he was like what the like he's like judgy, but like in a funny way. I don't know.
Like
Yeah.
he's able to like get his point across seriously, but also have that humor,
Right.
which is just amazing. And
Yeah.
just seeing him after we see him like give up on humanity, and then we see him with this family and he's happy and he's like accepted. I just think that was a very cool part.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely want to see more of him, like how that happened.
Yes.
Like, was it that guy that made him change his mind? Did he slowly change his mind? Like, how did he go from like, I don't care at all, they can like do whatever, to no, I'm going to protect them with my life?
Yeah, I think it was more of like he wanted to protect them, but it was like he still found faith in humanity.
Yeah.
So what was the relationship dynamic that like led up to that part? I think it's a very interesting thing to explore with Fastus. And yeah, like what you said, he's just like very like direct and like straightforward and like the one eternal whose like intentions I could like understand the most. And it was like in a sense that's really good because he sort of represented like that like so with like the Eternals, and when it came to them like splitting up, it was like, well, here's some of the Eternals that are like kind of on the edge. Most of them were like kind of on the edge of how to interpret it, but then Fastus and like Icarus were like the two like polar opposites. And I think that showed because when they were fighting, like Fastus like clipped him down. Like he was the only one who could like weaken Icarus's powers. Like he was not just an inventor, and I'm really glad they show that because it shows that you can be a thinker, you can be creative, and you can use like your you can use your thoughts to fight. And the way that he clipped down Icarus and he was like, I've been needing to clip your wings, Icarus. And like that line delivery was just so powerful and well done by Brian Tyree Henry. I was just overall really impressed with Fastus's character.
And that whole fight scene was amazing too, because like throughout the movie, we're constantly being told by like characters and by the storytelling that he's the strongest, Icarus is strongest. And like being able to see that after all he isn't, like because he doesn't like think it all the way through sometimes, like he's not as clear-minded when it comes to what he does. So when it comes to the other characters, like Makari was able to beat him down. And then like you were saying, it was cool to be able to see that who we think originally is the strongest based on just their powers isn't always, because you have to think about the powers, you have to work with them, and maybe he didn't have a handle as much, and I think that was a cool aspect.
I think Fastus had definitely more of a handle, and the only reason that Icarus was able to break free is because Fastus removed the restraints on him when Tiamat started like coming out. Like that was the only reason Icarus, like he could be argued for like one of the most like strongest Eternals, just because it isn't physical. It's still like he knew what he was doing. I think that's like one of the most like powerful parts about Fastus's character, is just like how clear-minded, logical he is. That's like what I enjoyed about him.
I think him, Circe, and Makari are definitely like the most in tune with what they can do and how strong they are.
Oh, for sure. Yes, for sure. Last but not least, we have Kingo. So Kingo, probably
the movie star.
The Kingo, the Eternals, whose character I probably had the biggest issue with. But like when I say biggest issue, it's because I like the way most of them were done. But Kingo was the one where I was just like a little bit more left unsatisfied with, if that makes sense. Because I really like going in. I liked Kingo, and the thing was, I actually support the decision that they took with this character of removing him from the final fight. But I just like I liked it because it showed like in an argument, you know, like there's the two polar opposites and then there's the person who's neutral. Like that's Kingo. Like I enjoyed that because it felt more human than just being like this is great, like this black, this is white, like there's no gray area. Like they had that gray area, and the one that was the most gray area was Kingo. I just don't know if the rest of his character performance it was more of like comedy and less of like him as a character that
he's
necessarily
like comedy relief.
That justified why he left. I feel like I understood the decision to have him leave, but with the other ways that he played out, I don't know if it necessarily like shows why he chose to leave.
Because we see him like say, "I'll follow you to the end" to Icarus, but like in the past clips, like when they first arrived, we don't really see that relationship. Like what sparked that? Like we didn't see much of Kingo because he was used mostly as humor.
Like
so I think he has time to like develop more and become more like of a character.
I don't think you can like have a morally great character and then have him be used as comedic relief throughout the film and then not really explore that. Because I'm okay with him I'm okay with having that like morally great character, but it's like you gotta like explore that throughout the film. And the only place where I really saw him be like I really saw those like touching moments between Kingo was what that one conversation with Sprite on his plane. That's like the thing that stood out to me, because he was like, you're a storyteller, you're the reason I decided to become an actor, and you are also the reason why I left you, because I was like thinking of myself. Like I think one of the biggest things, I think Kingo's real reason for leaving is to protect himself.
I think he's very much.
I don't think it was for Icarus. I don't think it was for the other Eternals. I don't think he even cared about Earth. I just think it was to protect himself, because he left Sprite. He did Sprite to protect himself. So but I feel like they needed to show that to like really make it clear, is like he thinks for himself and he will do things to protect himself the best. And that was like my one issue with his character, was just like the execution of it was a little bit like wonky. And the fact that people only really enjoyed him for being like comedic relief, when his character could actually be so much more deeper.
Yeah.
That's my thing with Kingo.
We see so much potential, like you were saying, in that one conversation he has with Sprite. Like, we see how much more he could have been. And again, with not seeing him much as a character, but especially in the past, I want to explore that more, because is he protecting himself because he's that type of person, like it's me, or is he protecting himself because maybe something happened?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe something had sparked that, like he feels the need to constantly be protecting himself because he doesn't feel safe.
Yeah. No,
Like,
exactly.
yeah.
That's just like what my thing was. Like, it probably at the end of the day it was just to protect himself, and he just showed obviously like a different motivations, because like he is like very like self-centered, which isn't a bad thing since
Yeah.
he's literally a movie star, like, but it's just like I wish they sort of like used that as a reason, maybe, because that was the personality they showed throughout the film. Maybe like they could have just like shown like that was the true reason. I just think like they could have executed his reasoning better, but I
Yeah.
don't have an issue with him being left out of the final fight. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can see he did it for himself, but he also cares too much. Like, he doesn't want to fight because he
Mm-hmm.
wants to be safe, but he also doesn't want to hurt those people because he
Yes.
does care for them.
Yes. It should have just been like showed better. That's all
So
I
that's
think.
why the question is he doing it because like he is self-centered in a way, which we see, or is he trying to use that being self-centered as a like protection thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's so many questions we could have answered about
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. And I think it just could have been executed better. Like, as a personality, like I did enjoy seeing him on
Mm.
screen. Like, that's why he was still. I'm pretty sure he's in my top 5. Like, after I think he's like my number 5. It's just like the way he was executed. I was like, you're not like top 3 anymore, unfortunately. But no, that was my only thing. And obviously, like with the Bollywood scene, I was like, no, what is this? But
I was like, what are you doing?
yeah, I was like, no. But yeah, like those are my thoughts on him. Well, those were the characters. Wow, 2 parts. Part 2. This is gonna be part 2 of the podcast episode. Because part 1 was just about the characters and our thoughts on them, and part 2 was necessary because we talked a lot about these 2 characters. So, about this movie. So, on to part 2. And part 2, we will be discussing more about the movie in general, like the plot, maybe the world building a little bit, like pretty much like just like centered on the plot and where do we think we'll be seeing the Eternals next, all of that. Yeah, pretty much this is like freeform. Like, I I just like I kind of want to start with like the Celestials, like not as a character, just like them and the story. Like, they fed us a lot in this one movie. They were like, you have these Celestials, these huge beings. They're the controllers of the universe. They establish life. They've been here for a while. Then they send out these Eternals. Oh, and then also these Eternals, like they're pretty much like sentient beings. Like, they get mind wiped, erased, and like these Celestials like have been here for like billions of years, and it's just like this is the origin of the MCU. And I was just like, what? Like I was left with more questions because I was like, well, if the Celestials exist, like where do they live? Where have they been? How does this tie into? So my thing was like, I think the Celestials should be connected to the multiverse, but then other people are like, they don't need to be. But I think for me, it was just like overwhelming, all of this. And when I saw Erishim, like, I kid you not, like when I saw him the first few times, I like jumped at him. I was like, I
I
was
was
like,
like,
I was
whoa.
intimidating. I was like, this is really great visual design. Like, the Celestials look so good on screen because they like made you like a little bit like taken back. Like, we've never seen like this much of a cosmic being in the MCU. So
I think my biggest question about them is, we know that Thor seems to know a lot about the universe, and we have Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
How has there never been an interaction with them where they've seen that happen? Like a planet break apart and then they come out of it. Like, how has that never been like interacted with anything?
Because it's probably like it might have been in like a different part of the galaxy, right? Like
Oh
a
yeah.
different like galaxy in like a different universe. Like they oversee like all the whole universe. So it could have been in like any planet on any galaxy. Like my one thing though is like ego. Like I genuinely don't think he's a celestial because why would you
Mm,
introduce ego as a celestial and then him like not like him as a celestial like not being talked about at all because
yeah.
he was on earth, like he was like walking around on earth, so like that was probably like a, I don't know if it's a plot hole, but that was like something that I was just like a little bit confused by, is like, well, what does that make ego, because I don't really think he's a celestial anymore. um I think it may have just been like more of like a fun like decoy or something by James Gunn and Guardians of the Galaxy too, like just to say he's a celestial, but he's not necessarily a celestial. He's like more of like kind of like just calls himself a celestial, but still like a higher cosmic being.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my thing. But I wonder where we're gonna be seeing the celestials next. Like,
I definitely think they could tie into like the multiverse.
yes.
I think that's where we're going to start seeing the Eternals interact with other
Yeah.
characters, because that will
Yeah.
be something big enough where
Yeah.
they will both kind of be able to work on it together.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Like, do you think one of the Eternals will cameo in Multiverse of Madness? And if so, who?
I mean, I hope they do. I
Mm-hmm.
have a feeling it would be one of the three of Athena, Druid, and
Yeah.
Makari,
Yeah.
because we have those three, the other three in space.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're being held somewhere,
Yeah. Probably at the World Forge.
and they're also those three are also more of like interacted with Earth. Like they're kind of more human right now.
Yeah.
So I think the ones, if we were to see anyone, which I hope would be those three.
Mm. You know what? I think you might be right too, because in a recent interview, like Benedict Cumberbatch was asked if he knew Harry Styles was casted as Eros. But it's like, why would Benedict Cumberbatch care if Harry Styles is casted as Eros? Like, he has no relation to him. Like,
Yeah.
unless it's like more of like a British thing, like, oh, how do you feel about another British actor? But like, there's so many Brits in the MCU, so like, unless it's like that, it's like, why would he care about Harry Styles being
Yeah.
casted as Eros unless Eros was making a cameo in Multiverse? Or one of the three Eternals was coming in. And we know Multiverse of Madness is doing reshoots. And like, I think one of the reasons for the reshoots too was like to add in extra cameos or something. And now that Eternals is out, doesn't hurt to say that like one of the Eternals might be making a cameo in Multiverse. And I definitely think like it'll just be more of like a cameo to maybe I the thing is, I still feel like we could have Arishem be in Multiverse, just because Multiverse is like a universal thing and the Celestials are like universal
Yeah.
beings. So I still feel like maybe Arishem might cameo, and then maybe like an Eternal or like Eros could cameo. Like I definitely do think that we would be seeing them in Multiverse. And if not Multiverse, I know for a fact like 90% one of them is going to be in Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
Yeah.
Like they have to be. It's Adam Warlock. Adam Warlock's a cosmic being. Like I feel like we'll definitely be seeing them like 90% in somehow. It will they'll be integrated into Guardians.
I feel
So
like there'd definitely be like a mention though in the multiverse,
yeah.
because they definitely will know stuff by then. Like Strange will be like, hey, these people exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I also want to know about like Circe and Kingo, because I want that to be kind of tied up the next time we see them, because I want to know how long were they gone. Like how long is Sprite just like kind of there and being like, what the heck? How long does it take those three to like figure out they're not on Earth anymore?
Yeah. Like where are they, you know? Some people said it might be the Eternal sequel, that like the Eternal
It's so
sequel.
long.
I know the Eternal sequel will be an Eternals versus a Celestial war that somehow leads to Galactus. And I'm not too familiar with Galactus in the comics, but I've seen him in a few of the comic runs that I've read. But like eventually like they lead to Galactus. Through like Galactus will be introduced through the Eternals, which like I'm not surprised. And there were also actually people saying that the X-Men, like some theories were saying like the X-Men could have been brought into the MCU through Eternals. So you know what? and some people are now saying like, oh, the X-Men could like make a cameo in multiverse. So I do think that we might be seeing the Eternals in multiverse. But the question is like, Cersei, Kingo, Fastest, like where are they? How long have they been gone? Like, yeah, those are questions that definitely need to be answered too.
All I can see is like Sprite being followed around with the camera. I'd be like, don't worry, I'm watching her. This is what happened day 1 when you're gone. Day 2, day 3.
That's so cute. No, that's so true. But yeah, like the world building that we got from this movie was just massive and like almost like overwhelming, I would say. Like it was crazy. I was like, this is like the MCU. And the fact that like we thought the biggest thing was like the Chitauri in 2012, and like no, it's crazier. Like you have these giant cosmic beings, and it's like, how are they going to tie into the future of the MCU? How are they going to be shown? Like, definitely, oh, so much. And like, not to mention, like, we still have that multiverse. It's like, are they somehow related to the multiverse, or do they just do their own thing? Like, maybe do they help with the creation of all these different universes? Because
it sounds like they might.
Sounds like they might, right? So very
because
like,
if they've been doing this for so long and like in our universe we don't know about it, they have been doing it in other places.
Right, exactly. So it would be very interesting to see how it ties into everything. And speaking of world building, I wanted to, if you want to, kind of wanted to talk about just the visuals. Like some of my favorite shots in this movie, and I've seen this image go like on Twitter, and it's just like the shot of Celestial, the Tiamat in the ocean. His like hand is out and his head is there, but it looks so beautiful. Like you would never expect that to come from an MCU movie. Like it's stunning. And I like look at that and I'm like, Chloe Zhao like really went all out. Like,
and she traveled a lot for this movie. She's like, we're going to the exact place this is actually themed in, and we're doing it there.
Yeah, I don't know what volcano they shot on, but like I know they were on a volcano because I saw like the photos. It's crazy. I don't even know, was there even a green screen used, like except for like the parts where CGI was implemented? I doubt there was a green screen, because I remember in the interviews and stuff, like they were talking about, oh, we filmed at London, oh, we were at the Canary Islands, oh, we were in like the Amazon at one point, oh, we were in like, I don't know if they necessarily shot in India, can't remember that, but like they were on all of these, like it was a global movie. So
Chloe could take over the MCU and I would not complain.
I hope she like, comes back.
Me too. I'm like, it's not going to be the same without you. You need to come back, buddy. Like, you're amazing. And easily this movie has jumped to my favorite MCU movie. So like, you need to come back and make me happy.
Yeah. I hope that she like, I mean, I'm pretty sure she did it, but I hope like the negative response from the critics doesn't deter her from making the sequel. Because I feel like personally for me, no one could do the Eternals as well as Chloe did. And it kind of goes back to the fact that the Eternals was a little like kind of the most mature movie we've gotten in the MCU, and not just because of like the sex scene, but just like in general because of like the themes that it explored, and like it talked about like genocide and war and like human and like inventions and like innovation and like all of that. Like I don't think anyone could have explored those themes as well as Chloe did, because I just feel like some people, like some directors, and it's perfectly fine in their own, it's like their own style, but might make the Eternals, who are these like gods, literally gods, they just might like make them funny, because even like the humor in Eternals I feel like was a little bit more like maturely executed, in the sense that it was more like natural jokes and not just like a throwaway joke. And maybe there were a few that didn't land, like maybe like Kingo sometimes just had like a joke too many, but you know, like it was just like more like the tone was more mature, and I just don't see anyone but Chloe being able to maintain that. I just feel like if we had another director come in, you would just kind of like slightly butcher it and make it, I don't want to say a joke, but just make it like more funnier than it needs to be. And I just think like it's only Chloe who could really do the Eternals. So that's
like
why
her vision is like unmatched. And I'm like, please come back. Like she's literally the reason I'm going to school for film production.
That's so cool.
Like I've never really been dive deep enough to like talk about directors until her.
No, I
And
haven't
I just
either.
think her vision, and I just don't think the movie will be an Eternals movie if she isn't there to like do it.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I'm a little scared for the other characters to cameo, just because the
Yeah.
other, like, these Eternals are so like distinctively defined that
Yeah.
I just don't want the Eternals to become almost like, and the thing is, like, they're supposed to be shown as gods, like these are gods, so I don't want them to like necessarily become more like, when I say like become human, like I mean that in like the way that humans are. Like I
Yeah.
want them to be shown as like these majestic gods that
Because none of the
Chloe
other
kind of established them to
directors
be. Yeah. Yeah.
have worked with characters like that. This is
Right.
why we need Chloe just to be the director every time an Eternal is in anything. Like she's okay, guys. You're gonna use an Eternal for 5 minutes. I'm directing this part.
Yeah.
This is my
Exactly.
character.
Yeah.
I'm doing it.
Yeah. I just think like that's what, because I've heard that sometimes like when like characters cameo, like I know a few people are concerned for Multiverse of Madness because Michael Waldron is the writer, and they're like, well, what is he gonna do with Wanda? Because up until now, like WandaVision really cemented Wanda as a well-written character. Like, regardless of whether you like her or not, like I watched WandaVision and I was like, she's a really well-written character. And like I enjoyed her character in WandaVision, but like now I'm like, okay, well, she's in the hands of Michael Waldron, and I did not like what he did with Loki for the most part. So like I'm concerned for like what he's gonna do with Wanda, and like Wanda like does not even make it in like my top 20 MCU characters. Like that's how much I just don't really care for her. But also at the same time, like
I don't want her to be ruined.
I don't want her to be ruined because she had a really solid arc in WandaVision. Like she the way that they explored her past in like WandaVision was done really well, and I was like, I don't want that messed up in like Multiverse of Madness, you know. So yeah, that's what, like, it's just like I'm kind of a little scared for the Eternals because I just don't want them to like lose that like sort of like elegance that they have to them.
That's
Just
why I
being,
believe characters should have individual directors when it comes to like series like this.
yeah,
Because they're used so often in different movies. I just feel like they should have one director control a character. Because when you're giving this character to multiple different directors and multiple different visions, the character doesn't stay like a constant person.
Right.
Like things are changed, so I think a very interesting thing is to see the differences once they're moved to different people. And I think that it would just be a cool way of cementing all the characters if they had one person creating that vision.
Yeah. I will say like the MCU did like a pretty good job with like all of the other characters so far, like Iron Man and Steve. Like they've been in multiple movies and their personality has been like the way that the characters have been showed, like it's been like pretty well done. It's just like some other adaptations of characters have me concerned for like the future and like who's handling the characters. And like my biggest one's like Waldron. So like if one of the Eternals cameos in Multiverse, I'm just like, I don't want them to be screwed over.
I'm just so concerned about them because like Chloe has such this. I could literally talk about Chloe for hours. She has such a like unique vision.
Yeah.
And just the way she created and directed, and just no one can match that.
No.
Like it's so unique to her that unlike other characters that can easily be like adapted the same by other people, I don't think that can happen with Eternals. That's why I'm so scared, because I've connected to them so much.
No, same. And I think it also goes back to like the fact that the Eternals are also so uniquely different. Like it goes back to the fact that they're like pretty much like gods. Like these are like heroes. Like imagine imagining Peter Parker, and I'm pretty sure like I see him as like a pretty big on mythology, like being a little bit of a mythology nerd, and turns out like he meets one of the Eternals, and let's say like Cersei, for example, like Cersei's like was big in Greek mythology, or turns out he meets Athena, okay?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh yeah, by the way, like I'm actually like Athena. Like the goddess you knew, like, yeah, like my friend Sprite. Well, she's a human now, but you know, like 5,000 years ago, she created that story out of like my battle, like all of that. And it's like these Avengers are like whoa, like you have been in our history, but
Yeah.
like we just didn't know. And it's like the Eternals are like, yeah, like that's kind of the point, but like now you know. But it's like that's why I need the Avengers to meet the Eternals so bad, because I want to see that reaction, you know. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed part 1 of the Eternals episode. Part 2 will be coming out tomorrow on Monday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let me know your thoughts on Eternals, either via Instagram, TikTok, wherever. Make sure to follow the podcast on all the socials. And again, if you want to be a guest on this podcast, you can fill out the Google form. And thank you guys so much for all your support and for tuning in. Happy 1 month to the movie Eternals, and I hope you guys have a good day.